It's very loud. You can hear me breathing.
So I want to welcome everybody to this extraordinary event. I'm Brad Hunsaker. I opened up Vitality Wellness Center about 11 years ago. And 30 years ago, I started my journey in the healing arts field as a reflexologist. And I still love serving people that way. And about 15 years ago, I started learning about energy medicine and frequency wellness and how to become well by applying the correct frequencies. And pretty much built a reputation locally of having the latest and the greatest, best technologies to use to help people get well. And about 13 months ago, my life changed because somebody sent me a copy of The Interview. Of course, that was the first one that Jason did with Dr. Sandra.
That was a good one.
And as I'm watching that interview, I kept pausing and wiping my tears. I was crying like a baby because I knew that this was not only the next thing I needed to bring to our community, but this was something that was intended to change mankind and change humanity at a time where humanity really needs it. So we opened up this center, the new version of Vitality Wellness Center, in October. And since then, it's just been absolutely extraordinary. And to have Jason come here and start his West Coast tour here is just an absolute gift.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
So when he's done talking, I'm going to do a raffle. There's 3 winners. And if you registered, you'll know what those 3 winnings are. First one is going to receive 12 hours of EE. Could be an overnight immersion, or it can be 6 sessions of 2 hours. And then the next 2 winners are going to get 6 hours of EE. So 3 sessions of 2 hours. And I guess that's it. So here's the one and only Jason Shurka.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All righty. Everybody can hear me well? Okay. I got sick of holding my hand like this for 2 hours, so I figured we'll just use something a whole lot easier. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for being here. We're going to do something a little different today. So I have a presentation that I want to give you guys to have everybody understand the basics of, and I say basics because it's not a complex thing to understand how this technology works. But before that, I want to read the room a little bit. I'm going to go around 10 of you just by the raise of hands, and I want to hear what you guys want to hear today. We're do it a little different. Instead of me assuming what you want to hear, we're going to hear what you guys want to do, and I'm going to do everything according to that and form according to that. Go for it.
Hey, Jason, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I talked to you with Sandra's Kitchen.
Yes, I remember.
So I want to know your big picture, long-term plan. What's on your, well, I don't want to say what's on your tombstone, but what's the legacy?
I'll be dead. I won't see my tombstone, Bowen. Okay, no problem. Anybody else? Any questions, any topics you want covered specifically that I can weave into it? Yes.
Additional modalities coming into the healing center.
Okay, additional modalities, big picture plan. Anybody else? Yes. Not Jewish, Hebrew. 2 different things. Okay. Okay, so that's a bigger picture question, spirituality, how to tap into ourselves and that power. Beautiful. Yes. Many. We'll talk about them. Yes.
That's what I was trying to find out too, because seeing how this energy works for the entire body, so it's essentially all different things for healing.
Got it.
So the frequencies, what they choose to us.
Awesome. Yes.
How best for anyone to prepare to receive this therapy? I see you're not wearing shoes, for instance. Stay earth.
I just don't like shoes. I'm kidding.
In 3D,
Yeah.
how do we do our part to receive as much as possible?
I like that question. I'll actually add something to that when we get to it. How to you identified something specifically. You said in 3D. How do we do that? And we'll go deeper into it throughout the presentation, but part of that, just to plant a seed, is to understand that what you call 3D is not different than any other dimension. You experience it as different than every other dimension because that's how we're hardwired to experience life. That's how we're hardwired to experience existence as we know it. But when people make a differentiation between 3D and 5D, that's not a fundamental thing that's going on. There is no difference. And that's actually what I'm going to get to over here when we speak about this whole essence of reality that we call 0 to the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Mainstream science believes that you can't go faster than the speed of light. We've proven that. Now they get upset, and soon they'll accept it. That's usually how the process goes. But the idea over here is to bridge the so-called gap, which is an illusion, because your speed of light is really your speed of perception. As your speed of perception changes, what you call 3D expands. Therefore, 3D was never really a thing. It was based on the limitations that we imposed upon ourselves. So you get your 3D and your 5D not being a different thing, which brings you, and what we'll talk about too, holistic health. Holistic health is not just from 0 to the speed of light, although it's better than health according to the pharmaceutical industry, because they just say take a pill and everything will get better, and it doesn't work like that. So the pharmaceutical industry takes a piece of this side of the equation. The holistic community takes this whole part of the equation, and the next paradigm of where we're going to is taking the entire equation. That's infinity. There is no difference between 3D and anything else, fundamentally speaking. So we'll dive into that. Anybody else? We'll take 2 or 3 more, and then we'll start. Yes?
What is the most powerful and quickest way to help shift the consciousness on the planet?
The short answer is by being the higher consciousness that you're talking about, but we'll speak about that as well. Yes?
I thought I noticed a really different feeling in your presentation when you came back from India. And I'm wondering if there's something deeper that you can share with us about your time in India and what you learned.
Yeah, it had a profound impact on me. Simply because, and I'll say it in one sentence, and again, I'm going to weave all of this into everything. I just want to understand where everybody's at before we dive in. There were pictures that I took in India that were horrible. I mean, the mental pictures and the pictures on my phone should not exist. They shouldn't exist in this world, but they do. So the experience that I had there, I cried every day, at least when I was in the first city where we were doing the install. And I wasn't sad and I wasn't happy. I was both at the same time, and I was confused. But to sum that up, and we'll go deeper into that later on, is the reason why I believe that I felt the way that I felt is because I saw the horrible things that were going on around the world, specifically in that place in terms of poverty and things like that, of like people literally with infections in their feet that they shouldn't be alive, and they're on the side of the street asking for water. There were tears of sadness because of that, but there were tears of joy because I understood that as we were doing what we were doing, we would take it a step further into making that closer to becoming obsolete. So it was a sad reality, but a happy reality at the same time because of the action that was being taken to overcome that. But that's a big, big conversation. Last one, yes?
I understand that the human body operates between 70 and 90 millivolts.
Yes. Technically negative 70 to negative 90, but I don't say that because it will confuse people. But yes, 70 to 90. Yeah, it's called, it's a big word. I forgot the word. I forgot the word. It's some big word in science having to do with, I'll get the name for you and I'll get it. It's in my history on my phone because I was reading about it yesterday. But yes, there are ways to be able to measure that. There are other ways to be able to reflect that, not necessarily through millivoltage, but for example, through pH and through oxygen levels in your body, which we're going to speak about over here. So let's dive in. I got a reading big picture. We'll do a Q&A at the end as well to be able to go deeper into everything. But I really want you guys to understand how this thing works. And the reason why I say that is, what's your name? So you asked, how do we shift the consciousness around the world? And part of what my intention is of doing here today is, have you ever heard of the 100th monkey effect? Okay. For anybody who doesn't know what the 100th monkey effect is, imagine 2 islands. Island number 1 with a species of monkeys, and island number 2 with a species of monkeys. One monkey starts doing something. The other one follows. The other one follows. And the 100 monkeys on island 1 all start taking on this new behavior, this new something that they're doing, scratching their head, moving their leg in a certain way, whatever it may be. Interestingly enough, although the monkeys on island 2 will never meet the monkeys on island 1, the monkeys on island 2 start doing the same exact thing. And it causes us to have to ask a question: how does something like that happen? How does that spread without something tangible? And the answer is because there's a bioresonant field. There's a field of information and energy that's everywhere. That's how the universe works. That's how the world works. Nikola Tesla said, when you understand everything in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, you will understand the secrets of the universe. These things aren't secrets. So when you ever have that point in your life where an idea just pops into your head, number one, it wasn't yours. It's not original. You pulled it from somewhere. Okay? No idea I've ever had was mine. I may have experienced it as my own because I don't know where it came from, but it came from somewhere. And it's that bioresonant field of infinite information. When certain people start tapping into that, it makes it easier for other people to do the same. When one person broke that 4 or 5 minute mile or whatever it was, 20,000 people did it afterwards. And it used to be called impossible. So it's breaking these limitations that we once imposed upon ourselves and then showing through action it's possible. Belief then changes, and the biology of belief is incredible. When your belief changes, everything changes. So that's the answer to what your question, even before we started. You don't even have to speak. You don't even have to show. You don't even have to express. You just have to be that very thing. Because speech travels at the speed of sound. Thought travels a whole lot quicker, and it's much faster than the speed of light. So when you're in that realm, just be that thing, and whether you know it or not, you will start interacting with others and inspiring others just through the beingness and the energy that you bring through your consciousness in this world. That's how we wake up others. So you could do it directly like this, and you could do it indirectly, which is even more powerful than this, just by being who you are. If you could do both, that's awesome. But let's start with step 1. So let's dive into this thing. If we understand, if we can tap into a simplified version of the awareness, or a simplified awareness of how this technology works, the energy enhancement system, number one, it will teach you how your body works. This presentation, sure, it's about the energy enhancement system, but it's about something a whole lot bigger. It's about how your body works. It's about how creation works. It's about how to tap. There are going to be, if you read between the lines of what I'm saying here, instead of just taking the dots that I give you, because I'm not going to tell you how to connect them. I'm just going to give you the dots and show them one way of connecting them. But I'm encouraging each and every one of you to take those dots and connect them in your own ways. If you read between the lines, you'll figure out things that I don't know. Just like the person who taught it to me, I taught them things also. The student becomes the teacher becomes a student. It's all good. That's how we do it. So read between the lines of what you're learning here today. It's going to be about the energy enhancement system technology, but it's about something a whole lot deeper. So before we dive into the technology, we have to understand 5 pillars of health, specifically 2 pillars of knowledge. And from there, we'll go into 3 different avenues that differentiate between disease and health. Before we get to this, let's start on the top: environment and the law of conservation. Let's make it very simple. I know in the world that we live in today, everybody thinks that health is a very complex thing and disease is a very complex thing, and we're not going to know what to do, and you need a million different tests that cost hundreds of billions of dollars to figure it out. And here's the thing that we've forgotten. Cancer and heart disease and diabetes and autism and everything is higher now than it was 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, they didn't have all those controlled studies, and yet they were healthier. So they must have known something that was a little more simplified than we do today. My job is to remind us of how to get back to that point. And where this is coming from, by the way, is not just because I studied it. I was born and raised with this. This is how I was raised with my family. It's second nature at this point, and it should be second nature to the world. I was kicked out of every single health class from 7th grade onwards. The teachers hated me. They didn't understand what to do because I spoke to them about AIDS. I spoke to them about vaccines. I spoke to them about the whole got milk commercials and all that. They told me that I would be very weak if I didn't drink my milk. And I said, well, you want to arm wrestle because I think you're going to lose. I might be 13, but that was when I was in 7th grade. So there were all these things that were brought up that really shaped me into why I'm standing here today. And I want to give you guys that background so you understand this isn't something that is newfound. This is something that it's in my heart, it's in my blood, and I want to give this to others because fortunately and unfortunately, I was brought around a lot of sick people growing up. Because my father and my parents and my family, they have nothing to do with the health and wellness space. They're in real estate. That's what they do. They're business people, but their hobby, their passion is health and wellness, specifically alternative, which is really the source that was then synthesized and chemically created in order to be able to be patented so they could sell it right back to you. Whole other conversation. But big picture, I was brought up around a lot of sick people. Cancer patients with 3, 4, 5 months left to live. Every single day I would see somebody else in my father's office that he was just donating his time and saying, what do you need? Let me read your blood test. Let me help you. And every single one of those people came in. The hospitals told them they were going to die. The doctors told them they were going to die. And most of them are still alive today without any side effects because it didn't take an invasive treatment to do something. And what I'm saying is dangerous because if and when the majority of the world starts understanding this, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. But a lot of people are going to be a lot healthier in this world. So there's a risk with it. There's a danger with it. But it's necessary because we don't need to live in a world like that. So let's start with number one, the environment. To make it very, very simple. Very, very simple. The basis, foundation of it all. The environment that you're in is a huge part, not the only part, but a huge part of what dictates your health or level of disease. Let me give you examples of what I mean by that. Number one, the environment that you're in is the environment that you sink to. Put yourself in a healthy environment, you will sink to health. Put yourself, or coherent environment, I should say, because it's all energy. You will sink to coherent fields. Put yourself in a dirty environment, a toxic environment, a polluted environment, you will experience the exact opposite. Because if that's energy and this is energy, and you're taking negative, distorted energy and putting it in touch with coherent energy, what's going to end up happening to the body is it's going to be impacted by the distorted energy, start messing it up. Almost like when you take water and play really, really, really hard, distorted, heavy metal music to it. Coherent water suddenly becomes distorted under a molecular microscope, and that's science. So if it does that to water, it does that to you because you're 70% water. It goes a whole lot deeper than that. Again, the environment that you're in is the environment that you sink to. 2 examples I can give you. If we were to spend enough time together, if we were to hug for long enough, 2 things would happen. Our heartbeat would synchronize, and our breathing would generally synchronize, especially if we have a good rapport and we're enjoying each other's company. The breath will synchronize all the way to the body movement. The way that you know how people are having either a good date or a bad date, or they like each other or they don't, is go to those restaurants that have a lot of date nights, look at the people that are mirroring each other and the people that aren't. It's not about who's texting and not looking. That's a very obvious way. But you can tell by the people who are mirroring each other with even under the table, they don't see what they're doing, but their body chemistry is aligned and they're syncing to each other because they're syncing to the environment that they're in. Okay? There we go. Yes. So breath and heartbeat is one of those. Body language is another one of those. There's another interesting one that happens with women. What happens when women spend enough time together? Their menstrual cycles start synchronizing. We can agree that it's not contagious? We're on the same page? So if we're on the same page that it's not contagious, then we have to come to this conclusion. We have to deduce that there is something that the bodies are aligning to, are syncing to, and therefore having an expression of the same symptoms over and over and over again. In this case, I'm calling the menstrual cycle a symptom, not a negative thing or a disease, just a symptom, an expression that we sync to. So again, number one, I'm going to drill it so everybody understands this because it's very simple. The environment that you're in dictates what you will be syncing to. That's a piece of the equation. Another part of the equation is called the law of conservation. The law of conservation, we all probably learned when we were about 11, 12, 13 years old in our first science class. And it basically states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. That has very, very deep implications. Remember when I said read between the lines earlier? This is where I'll encourage you to read between the lines. I'm not going to go into all the implications because you can write multiple books about just that. But if energy cannot be created or destroyed, one of the main implications is that there must be something that is infinite. If energy cannot be, something that cannot be created or destroyed also has no beginning and no end. It has no birth and no death. We call ourselves humans. We're matter that has a base of energy. So sure, maybe the identity of Jason will die, and the identity of every single one of you will die. The energy that created that form will not die, it will transform. That's what the law of conservation says. But the reason why this field is next to it, this field is called a torsion field, a toroidal field. And a toroidal field is basically what the law of conservation in action looks like. The torsion field is a field of energy. It's almost like a donut. I don't have my necklace on me because of the microphone. But it's almost like a donut, a medallion for anybody that has medallions that they're wearing. It's like a donut of energy with energy going this way and that way simultaneously. No beginning, no end, in all directions, all the time, instantaneously for eternity. This field is the law of conservation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So we have to ask ourselves a question. How do we tap into this field? Because if we can tap into and recreate the torsion field, the toroidal field, then we tap into free energy, the oil, even the electric industry. Tesla will go broke overnight. There's a lot of people with very big interests that don't want this to happen because they have a lot of power and control with those things. And that's not something that's, crazy to comprehend. When you're dealing with trillion-dollar industries, with individuals and corporations and families that have been around for a very long time, used to a certain level of power, with a certain level of status, with a certain way of life, they will go down fighting. They're not just going to say, oh, yeah, that's fine, you found a better way, so we're just going to go. It's not going to happen like that. They will put up a fight because, unfortunately, that is a part of what we are tuned into in the human collective right now. There is still greed. There is still corruption. There is still putting money over the importance of people's health and what we can do to make this world a better place. So anybody that understood this, Nikola Tesla being one of them, was either broke, killed, or scrutinized in many, many different ways, sometimes all three. Nikola Tesla was one of those people. He found a way to tap into what we call free energy. He found a way to tap into the implication of the law of conservation. He found a way to tap into the vacuum of infinity. Because if energy cannot be created or destroyed, there is an infinite source that cannot be depleted. And if we can tap into that, you don't need fossil fuels, you don't need oil, you don't need gasoline, and you don't need electricity. Not man-made electricity, at least. You need to tap into the electricity of creation, because that's what creation really is. It's energy. It generates electricity. Anybody that's done this, especially over the past 100 years, disappeared, committed suicide. Like that, of course. One of them, by the way, I know this doctor, he committed suicide and had 2 bullets in his head. You understand? Nobody cares, but that's what happened. So we need to find a way to tap back into that thing. And I'll explain how this technology does that and how we can do that beyond this technology as well, because what you're going to hear today is not just about depending on something outside of you. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. Empowerment, this tour is called the Empower Tour. Empowerment is about finding your power within. Some people ask me, well, if you're all about self-empowerment, diving deep within yourself to find all the answers, then why are you telling people to go to something that exists outside of them to help them heal themselves? And I say help them heal themselves because the technology doesn't heal you, you heal you. And the reason is very simple. Because when you understand what I'm about to explain here, you're going to understand that that thing is not doing it to you. You're doing it to you. As a matter of fact, this technology is a stepping stone along the way to get to form of an ultimate destiny. The ultimate destiny that we're talking about is when you become that technology, because that's what you are. You have the ability to create these torsion fields within yourself because that's what you are. How many of you have watched Thrive by Foster Gamble? For anybody who hasn't, you can actually watch it for free on the Unified TV app. If you haven't downloaded it yet, check it out. That movie shows you how the torsion field is the base of all creation with proof, with top physicists in the world, with top researchers in the world, showing you how that field is inherent in everything in nature, from the heart to the human body to an apple to a tree, all the way to the energetic field of planet Earth. Again, it's very important to reclaim that field because when we do that and when we move back into it, you will see a lot more health as opposed to disease in this world. We're going to go to cellular charge, pH, and oxygen levels. Each one of these three avenues, mediums, are the same exact thing. They sound like different things because one is called cellular charge, one is called the hydrogen potential of your body, pH, and one is called your oxygen level. But they're all the same exact thing expressed in a different way. Let's start with the beginning. The elevator pitch of how the energy enhancement system technology works is it is a cellular charger for the body. It charges the body's cells. Why is that important? Because health begins inside of you. Health does not exist out there. Health starts from within, specifically within your cells. Within your cells, you have something called an electrical charge. That electrical charge is measured in what we call millivoltage, MV for short. That millivoltage is very important to dictate the difference between health and disease. 70 to 90 millivolts in terms of the electrical charge of your cells is your optimal state. That means that if you have a charge of 70 to 90 millivolts, again, technically it's negative 70 to negative 90, but we're not going to get into that. 70 to 90, let's keep it simple. That is your optimal state. If you have that charge intracellularly, you literally cannot host disease because disease must and can only exist here. It's almost like go to the Dead Sea in Israel. Because it's so salinated, because there's so much salt in there, there literally cannot be life. It just doesn't exist. So this is doing the opposite. It's saying that we understand that cancer, for example, can only exist in a body that has a low electrical charge. It cannot live in a body that has a higher electrical charge. It just can't. That's the science behind it. So here's what's interesting. It shifts the way that we do everything. Because right now everybody says, how do we kill the cancer? How do we fight the cancer? How do we defeat the cancer? You don't. You just reshape the home that it's in order to give it a home that it can no longer live in. Let it run out. Don't try and kill it in the home. It's not going to work. Because the home will still be a home that can then host more diseases. Higher electrical charge renders health. Lower electrical charge renders disease. Specifically, 20 millivolts and below is when you start getting into some danger in the body. This technology, through what we call photonic collision, what that actually means is light hitting itself. Photons are just, it's another word for quantums of light. So when the light, which I'll explain, from those screens that are perfectly aligned collide in the center of that room, it creates an implosion with those photons. And that implosion then creates a charge. And that charge is charged between 70 and 90 millivolts. And why is that important? Because back to the first thing, the environment that you're in is the environment that you're going to sink to. So when you are in an environment that's charged between 70 to 90 millivolts, your body will naturally start going in that direction. Just like when you take cold water and put it in a hot glass, the cold water is going to start heating up because it needs to be in homeostasis and balance with the environment that it's in. So your cellular charge, again, optimal is higher. Disease is where you start getting lower. The electrical charge, millivoltage of your cells intracellularly. Let's go to pH. pH, I think everybody knows about that. Acidic, alkaline, neutral. Neutral is technically like 7.2 or something like that, but I'm just writing 7 to make it simple. As you go up here, an alkaline body cannot host disease. You go to any cancer patient, measure their pH, you will find that it's acidic. You will never find a cancer patient with an alkaline pH. It's not going to happen because it can't happen. Because just like 1 + 1 = 2, cancer cannot exist in an alkaline environment. That's your 1 + 1 = 2. Acidic environments render an environment that will allow for disease to exist, and alkaline environments render the exact opposite, in this case, health and wellness. So again, instead of saying, how do I fight the cancer? How do I fight the disease? How do I beat it? How do I defeat it? Now all you have to say is, how do I charge my cells, or how do I change my pH? Because if you do that, everything else will follow suit. And down here, your oxygen levels. This one's interesting. Sometime, I think it was in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, 18 or 1900s, there was a doctor named Dr. Otto Warburg. Does anybody know who that is? Has anybody heard of him? Some people. Great. Dr. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize. Okay, this is not just a guy that was saying something. He won the Nobel Prize for proving the following. He said, deprive a single cell of 35% of its oxygen for 48 hours, and that cell will turn cancerous. Again, deprive a single cell of 35% of its oxygen for 48 hours, and that cell will turn cancerous. So what does that tell us? That means that oxygen deprivation allows for disease to manifest. And oxygen enrichment is an environment where disease cannot exist in the first place. So why am I saying that these three avenues are all telling you the same exact thing? Because every single one reflects the other. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have an acidic environment in your body. You know what's going to happen next? Your cellular charge is low and you're oxygen deficient. Forget about pH. Let's say that your cellular charge is optimal. Your pH is going to be more on the alkaline side, if not very, very balanced. And your oxygen level is going to be on the higher side. And let's erase that part and go straight to oxygen levels. Let's say you have an oxygen deficient environment. You're going to have an acidic body and you're going to have a low cellular charge. One is a reflection of the other. So to answer your question of what you said before, how can we check? You now have another two avenues of how to do that. It's a simple pH strip. You could buy it anywhere. You could check it through your blood, you could check it through your urine, you could check it through your saliva. Any of those things will show you the reflection of everything else. And this one is probably the easiest one to measure. So if you just measure pH, it gives you insights into the other two that I'm talking about. The other two, you need other forms of technology to be able to do that for the most part. The oxygen one would be second easiest, and this one would be the third because of, I forgot the name, but they have like a machine to do it. And they have other machines. I forgot their names as well. I'll get them all for you by the end of this event. But the other machines, from what I've read, are not that accurate when it comes to this because you really need something like on the higher technology side to be able to do this accurately. But who cares about this if you could focus on this and read this through that? You know what I'm saying? So three mediums showing you the same exact thing because they're all reflections of one another. Yes? Yeah, you know how during COVID people were oxygen deficient, they couldn't breathe well, and their oxygen level in their body and their blood was generally lower? It's still in the 90s, but it's lower. If it went any lower, you would die. But yeah, it will show you the oxygen levels specifically within your blood or within, there's another way to check it. Yeah, through a monitor. Yeah, they're able to do that. I don't know what technology specifically does that. Whatever it's called. But yes, they have that thing where it shows up and shows you the actual percentage of oxygen in your body. So the higher the better, and think about it. Read between the lines. What does that tell you? Breath work. Just breathe. Breathe for a second. You know, everybody wants to make this thing so difficult. You need, crazy technology to do everything, and you can use stepping stones along the way. I represent the EE system because it's an incredible thing that can help a lot of people at the same time. But if you think that you're just going to come in here and walk out like those med beds from the movies and eat, McDonald's and drink Coca-Cola, and everything's going to be fine, it's not going to happen that way. It's a holistic picture that we have to take into consideration. From your breath, to your food, to the way that you live, to the music that you listen to the people that you spend time with. And we're not all perfect. We got our vices. We got our things that hold us down sometimes. And guess what? I think you should also enjoy those things in moderation. Have fun. You're a human. Do your thing, but make sure to always be aware of what we're talking about over here because through awareness with proper moderation, whatever that ratio is, 90-10, 80-20, 95-5, for some it's 99-1, and for Buddhas out there, not me, but for Buddhas out there, they're 100% of the time perfect. I'm not 100% of the time perfect. It's just because you know something doesn't mean you always do it. It means you strive and you do your best. And I want to be realistic with the people of this world that still enjoy their life, that still enjoy their life in the way that it is, I should say, because those monks and those Buddhas enjoy their lives. I can't sit on a mountaintop and shut my mouth. I'll kill myself. It's not going to work. So in short, let's summarize. Environment. You sync to the environment that you're in. Healthy environment renders a healthy body in terms of synchronization. Law of conservation, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Implication is your torsion field, which we'll speak about next. And your three pillars of health versus disease: cellular charge, pH, oxygen levels. Low on any single one of these renders an environment for disease to exist, and high on any single one of these renders an environment for health to basically flourish. Does that make sense so far? We're all on the same page? Okay, let me take another sip of water. Alrighty, so now we get into the interesting part. Let's talk about reality for a second. Reality is, I think most of us in this audience understand that reality is not what we've been told. It's not just what we can see. There's a lot more than meets the eye, than meets the ear, than even meets the brain, and every other thing that you have to receive in terms of your perception, how you perceive certain things. This right here is going to break certain beliefs that we've been taught, certain limitations that we've been taught that exist. So let's talk about this for a second. Everybody's probably heard of scalar technology, right? How many of you actually know what that is? Good. So today, you're going to walk away with everybody walking out of this, I was going to say room, but we're not in a room. Everybody walking out of this event today understanding in a simplified way. Of course, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper into everything, but I want this to be understandable to the common person, okay? So we have to understand how energy works for a second. We're going to go from 0 to infinity. In the middle, you see that light bulb. That stands for speed of light, which by the way is soul. That's interesting. But speed of light. The speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second or 186,000 miles per second. You don't have to remember that. All you have to know is that there's something that we call the speed of light. Other people are now calling it the speed of perception, meaning how fast we can actually decrypt light into reality. But again, that's a whole other conversation to have. 186,000 miles per second, your speed of light, is what breaks the barrier between what we call 3D and what we call 5D, what we call physical and what we call spiritual, what we call vector scientifically, and scalar. Scalar is technically 1.4 times the speed of light, but to make it very simple, faster than the speed of light, think scalar. You're walking into what they call quantum physics, the quantum field. Now, quantum's a very interesting word because nobody knows what that means either. It's just a word to explain we have no idea what the hell is going on, so we're going to call it quantum. That's all that's going to be. It's everywhere all the time. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Quantum. Great. That's what they did. Okay? When they say quantum medicine, quantum physics, nobody has a clue what they're talking about because we don't actually know the intricacies of that because it can't be measured yet, at least on the collective level of how we're working in the world today. But quantum basically means all the time, everywhere, eternal, infinite, no beginning, no end. It breaks every law of physics that we understand. But as our awareness expands, so will the laws that we start to discover and understand. And as that changes, so will our technology. Hopefully, as our spirituality increases with the technological developments, we'll be able to handle that. If not, we'll wipe ourselves out. There's only two ways with that. If your technology supersedes your level of understanding and awareness of the world, you will start creating technology that kills you instead of helps you. That's the world that we're living in now. There's probably a 5G tower somewhere here, and that's a perfect example of it. It's using energy in a way that is not coherent. It's using energy in a way that's distorted. iPhones are not bad. Computers are not bad. Technology is not bad. The network that we're working on is bad. The way that we've built our technology is distorted. It's incoherent. And that's what we have to start bringing in. So the world that I'm speaking about with this new awareness that we're going to be moving into is not a world that I'm saying we all have to be, barefoot cavemen and not use phones and not be able to FaceTime your grandma across the ocean on the other side of the planet. It's even more than that. It's saying we can do all those things and 100 times more. so long as we start understanding how energy actually works, because then we create things in coherency with the laws of creation, as opposed to with no awareness whatsoever and just a whole lot of knowledge. Knowledge versus awareness is an interesting thing. Let's look at Big Pharma. They have a lot of knowledge. They have more knowledge than probably any one of us sitting in this event today, because they could tell you everything about a molecule and everything about this and everything about that, and that's great. But if you have a picture with 1,000,000 pixels and you're genius enough to tell me about all the pixels, but not smart enough to tell me what the picture paints, then you're going to create a pill that's good for your acne but destroys your liver. Because you figured out one pixel. That's awesome. That's knowledge. Awareness is how we connect the dots. So, scalar vector. Up until now, as we were saying before, I think it was when you and I were speaking when you brought up the whole 3D and 5D thing. So that's the part that we're going to move into now. Big Pharma takes a pixel of your vector, your 0 to 186,000 miles per second. Why? Why do I keep stopping at the speed of light? Because anything beyond the speed of light is something that's completely intangible and immeasurable in the ways that we understand today. So everything that's based on anything in the modern world today, in the mainstream narrative today, which is the majority of science, is based from here to here. Let's say this is your picture of 1,000,000 pixels. Big Pharma takes 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and they perfect them, but they forget that it's one entire thing that's interconnected. Then let's take the next step up. You go to the holistic communities, like we said, alternative doctors, they're great. But the majority of the holistic spelt with an H takes here to here. So they take the whole picture that we can perceive from 0 to the speed of light. But we've forgotten that there is no beginning and there is no end. It keeps going. There's something faster than the speed of light. So it's great to balance this side of the equation. It's definitely better than trying to take a pixel. But what's even better than that is taking the entire equation and balancing everything from beginning to end. And that's what we're going to be speaking about today with this technology. How do you balance this side and this side to move from holistic health with an H to holistic health with a W? Truly holistic health, everything from beginning to end, taking all dimensions into consideration when it comes to helping the body heal itself, because that's what the body's always trying to do. And that's another thing. A lot of people think that we need to stand in the body's way. You don't. You know, animals don't have nutritionists. They don't have schools telling them how to eat and what to do. But yet all of them, when they're sick, do the same thing. They stop eating. They were never told. They were never, said, you got to do this and you shouldn't do this. It's innate. It's innate within us too. We've just forgotten. We've forgotten because we wear plastic on our feet. We've forgotten because we have incoherent fields around us in the homes that we live in. We've forgotten because we have technology that's distorted as opposed to coherent. We've forgotten because we're out of touch with nature, which means we're out of touch with ourselves. And if we're out of touch with ourselves, then how do you want to get back into those innate abilities? Innate abilities and instinct. Instinct and intuition. It's all the same thing. The zebra doesn't need to be told to run away from the lion. It knows. And it doesn't just know because it saw its brother or sister be eaten by the lion. It knows. It knows to run because it can feel those things. Animals know when storms are coming because they can feel them. We need a weatherman, and even they're wrong 50% of the time with our high technology. So who's really advanced and who's really primitive? That's where we need to start moving into. That's the shift that we need to start having over here. So again, scalar, vector, we're going to balance all sides of this equation. With that technology, if you were looking at it right now, you'd see two pieces. You'll see a black box. This is the technology from the side. You'd see a black box behind it, and you'd see a screen. This is the front view of that screen with all the lights. Let's make this very simple. Your black box is balancing this side of the equation, which I'll explain in a moment, and your screen is balancing this part of the equation. That means that your black box, what Dr. Sandra Rose Michael calls an engine field generator. What an engine field generator really is, to make it super simple, is creating an electromagnetic field, in this case, using a computer, identical to the one next to it. And why is that important? So we're going to deal with this side of the equation first, and then we'll go to this one. Your engine field generator is creating an electromagnetic field that is completely coherent. But it's not enough just to have one, you have to have a few in multiple different locations. Because remember we said we need to recreate this field right here, this torsion field, this toroidal field. It goes back to foundation number one, the environment. The environment that you're in is the environment that you're going to sink to. If we can create an environment with a torsion field that's balanced, that's coherent, and you stand and sit in an area like that, in an environment like that for long enough, your body will start coming back into coherence because it's in an environment that's coherent. Here's the science behind it, and this is the only part that you may have to memorize, but it's 1 or 2 sentences. To create a torsion field, you need 2 identical electromagnetic fields aligned precisely, and the merging point, which is right here, think of like a Venn diagram with those 2 circles. The merging point of those 2 identical electromagnetic fields will create a torsion field. Okay? 2 identical electromagnetic fields that are precisely aligned, their merging point will create a torsion field. Let me explain that in a different way to make it even easier to understand. This is supposed to represent 4 hoses spewing water with perfect width and perfect water pressure and perfect alignment. The same exact hose, let's start with 2 of them. One here and one here. We'll make it even easier. Take 2 cars. You have 1 car coming this way and 1 car coming this way. Exact model, exact speed, exact acceleration, precise alignment. Everything is identical on both sides of the equation with those cars. What's going to happen when they hit? They're not going to move left, and they're not going to move right. They're going to come to a perfect standstill. They're going to smash against each other, but they're going to come to a perfect standstill if they were aligned precisely and identical on both sides. Let's do that with water. Hose 1 and hose 2. Forget about these 2 for a second. Hose 1 and hose 2 are identical. Identical water pressure, identical width, identical perfect alignment. Everything is identical. When those streams come and hit each other, water is going to go up and water is going to go down. And that's great, but what happens if we add another 2? And what happens when we add another 2 is you now move from a 2-point torsion field to a 4-point torsion field, meaning it's a whole lot more stable. Think instead of a line, you now have a plane. You're able to balance a whole lot better. When you have 4 hoses in perfect alignment, identical everything, in that merging point, what's going to happen? You're going to have water going up, down, left, and right. And what I'm going to say next, I need you guys to listen closely because you can get confused if you miss this part. If you take out the factor of gravity, that water will turn into a torsion field. Why do I say take out the factor of gravity? Because the screens in that room are not spewing out water. They're spewing out light. And light is not impacted by gravity. Therefore, in the center of that room, because of the identical engine field generators, electromagnetic fields, on every single one of those stacks on each side, you have the merging point of a perfect torsion field that goes up, down, left, right, about 2.2 miles in every single direction. That means that a 2.2 mile radius of a sphere, not a flat plane of a circle, is being covered in a coherent field of energy that we call a torsion field from this black box. Does that make sense so far?
So is this putting the energy out throughout this 2.5 miles?
So here's what's interesting. On this side of the equation, because that's what we're dealing with the torsion field, it's scalar. We're dealing with things that are faster than the speed of light. Anything faster than the speed of light can go through walls. I can't go through this wall because the resonance of my hand is not at that speed. If it was, I would be able to move through this wall.
So that's why people that have that energy are able to do that.
A piece of it, you're talking about like telekinetic movement.
No, actually going through. When I was in India, I saw this happening.
I didn't know how crazy you guys wanted to go. Yeah, we can go there if you'd like.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't want people to think I'm too crazy, one step at a time. So, say it again. Oh, she was speaking about how she said, there are people in India that she saw that basically can move through objects. So I said, I don't want people to think I'm a psychopath here, but it's true. That's exactly how. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So if you can shift the density of your body, and you can, if you shift the density of your body, there are certain individuals that are advanced enough, and this is where we go into spirituality, 5D, scalar. There are some words that are trigger words here for people around the world, because when you say spiritual, you think woo-woo, for some people around the world. But spiritual just really means non-physical. So if I can tap into, and I don't know how to do this, but if I can tap into that higher density, that higher speed, then yeah, my hand would be able to move right through that wall. So why were we talking about that? Because scalar energy goes through everything, because it's beyond the speed of light. So it will basically surpass and go through everything on this side of the equation. Walls, human beings, rocks, anything that's physical exists on this side. So that torsion field goes 2.2 miles down, 2.2 miles up, 2.2 miles left, and 2.2 miles right. It's creating a sphere of technically a 4.4 mile, if you count two radiuses, right? In 2.2 miles in all directions, that's being covered. So now some people will say, okay, so if that's true, then why do I have to be in the room? I could just be 2 miles away from here, right? I know you were probably thinking that because I do this every day. So people, yeah, I got it. So why do we have to be in the room? Well, let's remember, we're talking about this side of the equation. We don't want holistic health. That's just one side. We want holistic health that takes the entire reality, which is infinite, into the equation. So remember, what's your name? Dominic? Dominic. What he said in the beginning was he was speaking about how we're 3D beings, and that's true, right? We experience ourselves as 3D physical vessels, as third-dimensional physical vessels, something we could touch, smell, all those things. So I'm coming off a little, this is what happens when I don't sleep a lot. But where was I? Okay, so because we're 3D physical vessels, physical beings, we also have to take that into consideration. It's not enough to just focus on this side of the equation. We got to give the physical vessel what it needs as well. And the physical vessel means we have to play a whole different game. Up until now, we've been playing the scalar game with the engine field generator creating torsion fields. Now we got to play the vector game, which is where your monitor comes in, through light. Which brings us to the next page. So if you were to look inside that room, you would see a monitor with light, with movement, with different speeds, with different colors. And the average person looks at that and says, as a matter of fact, when I first saw this technology, full transparency here, I want you guys to know this, I thought it was a bunch of nonsense. I looked at it and said, what is this now? You can tell me that there's going to be a screen with a box and some colors. I'm going to walk in, things are going to be great, and I'm going to walk out. I couldn't comprehend it until I started going deeper into the science. It took me a second to be able to accept it because of my own limitations of what I understood and what I thought I understood and what I knew and what I thought I knew. So it's a matter of expanding awareness, and a year later we're in a different place because I sat down and I learned this thing. But the majority of the world will look at this and say, what are you talking about? You can't do that. Almost like the majority of the world, especially the scientific community, says that death is the end, while at the same time they say energy cannot be created or destroyed. Okay, so they're literally contradicting themselves without understanding that they're contradicting themselves. And I realized that I was doing the same thing with the beginning of my journey with this technology. So let's go back to the monitor. People look and they say, okay, so what is this color? What is this speed? What is this light? How does it work? And we're going to break it up into 4 different main portions. It's deeper than this, but we're going to try and simplify this to make it as easy to understand as possible so you guys can walk out of here with an awareness of how this thing works and then activate the 100th monkey effect where just knowing it will help others understand it without you even speaking to them. Schumann's resonance. The Schumann's resonance is a standard of 7.83 hertz. What's your name? Yosera? Yoserin. Okay, where are you from? What's your background? Very cool. Cool name. I've never heard that before. So, what you mentioned before is you asked how do we tap deeper into our higher abilities? How do we tap deeper into that spirituality? And you specifically brought up the Hebrew language, right? Okay, number one, the Hebrew language is not a Jewish thing. The Hebrew language existed way before the Hebrews did. They call it the Hebrew language because the Hebrews adopted it. The pharaohs used it, and I personally believe that it was used on other planets as well. I don't think that the pharaohs were human beings. Let's just get that straight. Some people agree, some people don't. I don't care. That's my belief. So the pharaohs used this language. The Hebrews didn't exist yet, and then they became Jews. This is not a Jewish thing. This is not a religious thing. This is a language that was discovered, not created. Just like math was discovered and not created. Why do I bring that up right now with the Schumann's resonance? I bring that up because the Schumann's resonance is 7.83 hertz at its base. That's your base number of a Schumann's resonance. And when you add 7.83 hertz, 7, 8, and 3, you'll always get to the number 18, right? Basic mathematics. 18 is your base, take the Hebrew language, for example. The word for life, which is chai, which is two letters, chet and yud. If you take them according to gematria, and that's how gematria started. Gematria in English is a bunch of nonsense. Somebody sat there and decided to associate. That's not, English was a created language. Hebrew is a discovered language. Gematria in English is not real, I'm sorry. But it's not based on anything that is according to the laws of creation. Okay? Thank you. Vibe. Thank you, like my backup here. So gematria, again, was something that was based off of the understanding of the laws of creation, which is what the Hebrew language was based on. And that's why, and this goes deep, but that's why words like chai, which is life, represents 18. That's why there are certain inversions in the world today, like 666 being evil. It's not. It's 18. It's your life. That's why 13 is Friday the 13th, and they don't have 13 floors or anything like that. Well, the word love in Hebrew, ahava, is 4 letters. It's aleph, hey, bet, hey. And if you take those 4 letters and you add them up in gematria, you're going to get the number 13. 13 is your resonance of love. 18 is your resonance of life. 7.83 hertz represents life. It's the heartbeat of planet Earth. And that's something that can be measured. So the Schumann's resonance is extremely important, measured in hertz, of course, 7.83 hertz, is extremely important in reclaiming if we want to come back into that. Somebody spoke about me being barefoot. This isn't really the greatest place to be barefoot. I just don't like shoes, that's the truth. But the greatest place to be barefoot is on Earth, because Earth is electrical. There is an electrical charge on Earth, and there is an electrical charge to your body. And when you spend time on it, there's a reason why grounding, like standing barefoot on Earth, decreases inflammation in the body. That's proven. That's not woo-woo. That's something that they've shown. It decreases inflammation because just like stepping into here is like a cellular charger for the body, so is standing on Earth. So is standing on the ground. You get to charge the body. You get to dive deeper into that innate ability for the body to heal itself. So reclaiming your Schumann's resonance is extremely important, and part of the technology that it's transmitting through the vector side of the equation, this side that we're dealing with now, is the Schumann's resonance, your 7.83 hertz, but it gets a whole lot deeper than that. How many of you know what the Fibonacci sequence is? Okay, so I'll explain. The Fibonacci sequence, in short, has anybody heard of the golden mean, the golden ratio? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, so the Fibonacci sequence basically is a series of numbers that we see everywhere in nature. For example, when an embryo forms and cells multiply, there's a way that happens in terms of your multiplication of those cells. And that's identical to when a flower blooms, according to fractal mathematics. And fractal mathematics is just a whole different level of mathematics, but it's measurements between the center of the flower to the petals and how all that works. There is the same sequence, the same order of numbers. This is something that anybody can look at. This is something that anybody can research and look up. It's called the Fibonacci sequence. And this doesn't matter, but I'll show you just so you guys understand. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 44. What's the actual, and it keeps going, what's the actual relation between all these numbers? If you take the 2 before it and add them up, you'll get the next number. 0, 1 is 1. 1, 1 is 2, 2, 1, 3, 3, 2, 5, 5, 3, 8, 8, 5, 13, 13, 8, 21, 21, 13, 44, and it keeps going. So what you're seeing here is, just a second. So you know when the screens move, when you guys see, if you were to look at the screens for long enough, something interesting happens. Suddenly it changes direction. And if you see it starting from the beginning of the program, you'll see it go according in the unit of seconds to these numbers. So when it changes direction, it goes up for 1 second, down for 1 second, up for 2 seconds, down for 3 seconds, up for 5 seconds, down for 8, up for 13, down for 21, up for 44, and it keeps going. That's a transmission of the Fibonacci sequence through what we call light, through what we call biophotonic light, meaning light that is now being stored by your DNA, because the prime function of DNA is the storage of photons, is the storage of light. Give it coherent light in a coherent way, it will produce coherency, it will express coherency. Give it the opposite, and it will express the opposite. So again, the Schumann's resonance and the Fibonacci sequence is something that is built into that code that's being transmitted and emitted through those screens in that room over there. And then we go to photonic collision. Photonic collision is what's creating your charge. So you have precise alignment. When they came, and where's Brad? There we go. When they came to install this thing, did you see how they aligned it with their laser calibration and all that? So
9 hours.
a long time. And the reason why it takes so long is because it's not just putting up some towers with screens on it. You need to take that and remember, to create the torsion field and to create coherent photonic collision, you need the screens and the black boxes, the engine field generators, to be precisely aligned, in this case, within 1/100th of an inch. So they use lasers to calibrate and all that. And if it moves, you got a problem. So there are laser calibration kits to be able to check these things. But basically, in short, those screens that are emitting the light, what is light? They're photons. Think of it as like little particles of light, okay? So those particles are now there in that room. You'll have screens in each corner of the room. So let's take that corner and that corner. You'll have the light hitting itself in the center of the room. And when those photons collide, when the light collides, as I said earlier in this presentation, you will have an implosion that will create an electrical charge that is charged between 70 to 90 millivolts. And again, that goes back to the first foundation of the environment. You put yourself in a charged environment from 70 to 90 millivolts, you will experience your cells actually trying to match that thing. Now, it's different than when you have, let's say, hot water, putting it into a cold glass, or cold water into a hot glass, whatever it is. Generally, both would try and come together because the temperature of the glass and the temperature of the water can change. You can't change the 70 to 90 millivolt thing. Therefore, your body will do whatever it can to come back into balance with that, because that's not going to come and match you. That's where creating something to make it happen, just like you create a vitamin D supplement to make it happen. It's an interference, but unfortunately in the world that we live in today, when you live out of coherency, out of alignment with nature, you're going to have to use different things to come back into that alignment to then get to a point where you never need something like this again. Actually, the business model behind EE system is to go obsolete. That's how you'll know we've succeeded. We have a long way to go because there are a lot of people on this planet. But it's the only one that I know that you actually, it's something that's said over and over again. We'll know we've succeeded when every single one of these centers shut down. Nobody ever needs this technology again because you have the ability within you. It's just hard to tap into that in a world that we're living in right now. So photonic collision creates that cellular millivoltage charge that then impacts your cells and charges your cells. And the last point of this whole thing is colors. So you see a lot of different colors. If you look at the screens, you're going to see red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, everything in between. What is color? Color, we were taught in school, is just red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. What it actually is a wavelength. You can measure it as nanometers. So the difference between red and violet is your wavelength. It's an energy, it's a frequency, it's a resonance, it's a vibration. The difference between red and green is a different resonance, it's a different energy. And then that energy, because of how our eyes work, we see within that spectrum of 360 to 720 nanometers. They call it in science 400 to 700, but whatever. The technicality is 360 to 720 nanometers. And because that's what we can perceive, what do our eyes do? Our eyes take energy, decode it, and translate it into what we call color. But the base of what green or violet or blue or whatever is an energy. Why is that important? Let's go to food for a second. I've written about this. Some of you may have heard me speak about this, but it's really important. If what I'm saying is true, if what Nikola Tesla said was true, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, you will understand the secrets of the universe. Then when it comes to color, if color can be used as an energy and therefore as a therapy, is it possible that the color of your food can actually show you what part of the body the food is good for? Before we answer that, let me explain something. In Western medicine, the map of the body says the endocrine system, the pulmonary system, the cardiovascular system, the whatever, all these different systems. And in Eastern medicine, there's generally a person meditating with 7 different, they call them chakras. And each one of those chakras they call pseudoscience because they don't understand that it's saying the same exact thing that the Western medicine is saying in a different language. So because they don't understand it, they call it pseudoscience. What's really going on here is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Each one of those energy centers align to a different part of the body. For example, your green, your heart chakra, the one that connects the 3 below and the 3 above. It's your heart and your lungs on the physical level. Now think about this. Green foods, just coincidentally, are very good for your heart and are responsible for clearing phlegm out of your lungs. That's like one of their main primary things. Anything green. You take asparagus, you take artichoke hearts, you take avocado. All of those things, of course, they have benefits for the entire body. But if you were to focus on what's good for what based on its color, you'll see that each part of the body based on its color will show what it's actually good for. So now, take yellow. Your bananas, your pineapples, your mangoes, your lemons in your water. What are those things good for? Digestion. It's not a coincidence that those things happen. Here's the genius that they knew 3,000, 4,000 years ago in Eastern medicine with their little Buddha pose, meditating with those 7 energy centers. They basically said, forget about the details of the lungs and the heart. Let's think about it in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. What is the optimal frequency of the heart and the lungs? Because if we can give it its optimal frequency, then we can heal it. Right? It's as simple as that. Without all the studies and the this and the that, if you can bring it back to its optimal frequency, you can help it heal itself once again. And somehow, and I don't know how they did it, but they were able to identify each part of the body and its optimal frequency in terms of their own map. So today we call ourselves advanced in medicine because we know all these things about all the pixels in the picture, but we forgot the base of what it's built on. And back then, sickness didn't exist in the way that it does today because they understood it differently. Because they understood that the optimal frequency of the heart is what we perceive as green, which is really just an energy. And the optimal frequency of the digestive system, your stomach, is yellow, which is the energy expressed as yellow, which we perceive as yellow. So just like those foods are good for that part of the body, using color therapy does the same thing. So long as it's coherent, proper color and not distorted, man-made color. There are certain points on the spectrum of nanometers that are your whole colors, just like there are certain points on a musical scale that are whole notes. Right? There are certain notes, when you put them next to each other, they make you cringe because it's mathematics. And when you put certain notes next to each other that don't belong, it's literally listening to a song that's going to hurt you, that's distorted because it's not a coherent song. It's not a coherent formula. It's not a coherent set of numbers. It's not in a perfect ratio. So just like music has to work in a perfect ratio to sound a certain way to make you feel good, so does color. And what you're seeing on those screens is color being transmitted in that perfect ratio. And again, the prime function of your DNA is the storage of photons. All right, so if you give it coherent light, you will experience coherency. It will then give that to the rest of your body. When you give it coherent blue light, it will send that to the proper parts of the body. Today, they use blue light and actually red light for things like arthritis. They're using that in doctors' offices. Now they're just trying to find a way to monetize it. So that's usually how the whole thing goes, because they can't put something out there that's going to make everybody else bankrupt. Believe it or not, it will actually destroy the economy. I have no problem with that because I want to see people healthy. I think that we'll deal with it and we'll get over it. But tomorrow, you have a cure for cancer, they're going to have a big problem. Many people will have a big problem. Tomorrow, you have free energy. Everything that our economy is based on goes down the drain. I'm okay with that. We'll deal with it, we'll figure it out, and we'll get there. Because it will bring us to an incredible point. But long story short, when it comes to color in terms of the transmission on that screen, it's using color within the spectrum on the side of the vector side of the spectrum, to create coherency. So now let's just go big picture. You got your black box and you got your screen. You got your scalar and you got your vector. You got your 0 to infinity with the illusion of the speed of light that we're now throwing to the garbage. We balance this side of the equation by creating a coherent and stable torsion field through your black box in there, your engine field generator. But that's not enough, because we also have to give attention to the 3D, to the human body. And that's what we do with the screen, with the monitor. That balances your vector, your 3D, and your physical. That's how we move from holistic health with an H to holistic health with a W. And that's why this thing works. I'm going to end with one very simple sentence, or maybe a few. Nothing outside of you will ever have the ability to heal you. No doctor, no pill, no medicine. It's not how it works. What's actually going on, even if the pill works, because there are some that work, what's actually going on is the pill is acting as a facilitator for your body to activate something within itself. And if the pill can do that, so can you, because it's the body that's doing it at the end goal. The doctor is the teacher. That's what doctor means. It's an educator. It's a teacher. It's somebody that's meant to show you the power that you have within yourself to heal yourself. Do we use things along the way, especially in the world that we live in right now, that will help us as stepping stones that wouldn't have been natural 1,000 years ago? Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you have to adjust to things as your world changes. A lot of people sometimes say, well, that's not natural. Why would you do it? Nothing about the way that we live is natural. So we're going to have to adjust until we can get back to that and create a different world and a different life. But in short, health is something that is very accessible for all. Health is something that is easy to tap into when you understand the simplicity of it, instead of listening to the people that tell you how complex it needs to be. And if you can tap back into that, use every resource that you have, and understand that you have everything within yourself to heal yourself as well. It's not anything outside of you that heals you. It's you that heals you. And that's the most important thing that I want you guys to walk away with today. So thank you very much. And you guys are awesome. Say it again.
Tell us how to find your books and your websites and stuff.
Oh, we'll get there. We're getting into a Q&A right now. Let's have some fun. Okay, now's the time to dive into some questions. So wherever you want to go, yes, we can take it.
If you have a cube that's got screens on 4 sides, how do you create the photon collision?
You don't. A cube doesn't have photonic collision. Cube has everything else that I spoke about with the exception of photonic collision. They call it a photonic fountain. It's the photons going out. So it still has 3 parts of the equation, which is your Schumann's resonance, your Fibonacci sequence, and your color therapy. It doesn't have photonic collision because the screens are not facing each other. Yes?
If you don't have photon collision, you don't have torsion field created.
Not true. Photonic collision is on the vector side, torsion is on the scalar side. The cube has 4 identical electromagnetic fields, if you look inside those black boxes, that are creating the merge point in the center that still goes out 2.2 miles. You got it. Yes?
I was wondering about the use cases specifically for autism and Parkinson's, if there's any research on that.
a good question. I'm going to figure out how to answer it. So he asked the use cases for, you said Alzheimer's? I know Parkinson's. What was the first one? Autism. Okay. Say it again, I'm sorry? Yes. So what I'm going to say next, I'm going to have to be very, very careful with, because number one, medical claims cannot be made on something that's not a medical device. Let's put that out there first. You understand? But what I could do is share experiences of others with you and be the medium to be able to share that with you. So again, I have to preface with this, the technology is not healing you. You are given the proper resources and the environment to do that. We've been taught that things like autism or Parkinson's, specifically autism, let's go to that for a second, is you just live with it. There's nothing you can do. But if something can have an onset date, then there must be a way to overcome it. It's basic law of the universe. It's balance. If there's a problem, there's a solution. If there's a disease, there's a cure. If there's an ailment, there's a way to get around that and come back into coherency once again. Question is to what degree? That's a whole different story. But there's always something that can be done. What I'll say now, the fact checkers will disagree with me, but I'm going to say it anyways. Autism is in many cases having to do with heavy metal damage, heavy metal problems in the body. So is Alzheimer's, by the way. Parkinson's, any pool guy, I say pool guy like the people that work on pools, that put chlorine in the pools every day, most of them have Parkinson's because they're breathing in chlorine every single day. All the pool guys that I knew growing up, every single one of them has that today. They all have tremors, they're all like this, it's a problem. So we're living through this toxic soup. We're experiencing a toxic soup. So the common way to get around that is how do we purge of toxins? Right? It's very simple. Autism is nothing normal. Let's start with that. And we know that autism is not a natural occurrence because in the 90s it was 1 in 10,000. Today it's 1 in 35. And then a doctor will always tell me, not all doctors, but the conventional ones will say, oh no, we just didn't know how to diagnose it. But anybody over the age of 70 here today, do you know an autistic person growing up? Growing up, did you have an autistic kid in your school? No. Okay. Well then, I ask everybody that. And there is nobody over even the age of 60 that knows an autistic kid that they grew up with. You know autism when it's there. You know when there's a problem. A lot of things. Even Alzheimer's. I ask across the board. It was there, but today everybody has it. Today there are 40 and 50-year-olds that have it. But anybody over the age of 60, how many people did you know with Alzheimer's growing up? How many people did you know with cancer growing up? They knew how to diagnose it back then. There's a problem around the world. And I'm saying that right now to you, to your question, because this is not something that's natural. This is something that has to do with a purging process that we need to go through in response to the toxification process, intoxication process that we've been going through for a very long time, especially over the past 10 or 20 years. So in short, with autism, I've seen many, many kids, and I say kids specifically, anywhere from 4 years old to 19, 20 years old, that their cognitive abilities change. Their way of speech change. Nonverbal children have become verbal. Again, to an extent. They're not professors in colleges right now, but they're doing much better. They're doing so much so that they're getting accepted to college. Did you know that there's a 35% chance, if you have autism, 35% of the autistic population is accepted to college and goes to college? That's a statistic. That's a statistic. So there's this, he's 19 years old, turning 20. His name is Dylan. I did a video with him. Somebody reached out to me from the Mount Kisco Unified Healing Affiliated location in New York. She said, listen, there's this kid. His name is Dylan. I've been helping him for the past few months. He's been doing much, much better ever since he's been coming to, in her case, a 12-unit system, just like here, I believe. And I really she said, we want to send him to school, but he doesn't have the funds to go. He's getting accepted to High Point University. He doesn't have the funds. Can you interview him and let's see what we could do? I said, no problem. Let's do it. So anyways, throughout that whole process, we ended up gifting him a cube from Unified Healing and EE System. And his grades have literally went from D's to B's, from C's to A's. He's going to college. He's in school right now. We helped raise funds for him. So it goes to show you that, again, I'm just giving you one specific example. when it comes to autism specifically, but yes, there are a lot of situations where people have reported a lot of incredible results, and that's just one of many that I get. A lot of younger children, again, nonverbal to verbal. Somebody that just couldn't speak is now able to, say their ABCs, let's say, when they're 4 or 5 years old, something like that. So that's one. Parkinson's specifically, I've heard of people losing their tremors very quickly. As a matter of fact, I have an interview coming out in 3 days from now with Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has his technology in his home. It's good. But he basically has two 24 units now in his home, one in his bedroom, one in his office. And I asked him, I said, how'd you find out about this? And he said, well, my friend Dan from the Beverly Hills Rejuvenation Center works with all these celebrities. He told me about it. And he knew that I actually had this in my home already because he had a 16 unit and he has like a massage room and meditation room in his house, Florida. And he had it, but he never really knew what it was. He's just like, I like it. I felt good when I went around it once, so let's just put it in. That's what he did. So Dan calls him one day and he said, do you know what you have in your house? And he said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, this system, I have friends that went in 6 hours later, their tremor was gone from Parkinson's. So that's one of the situations that I've heard of before. The majority of the situations that I hear have to do with strokes, have to do with strokes, autism, a lot of muscular and like pain in the body that goes away. Memory is a very, very big one. There's actually a page on unifiedhealing.com, a testimonial page that there's a category button that you can scroll through. So I don't know if Parkinson's is on there, but let's say you click Parkinson's, you'll see every testimonial ever shared having to do with that, having to do with cancer, having to do with autism, having to do with Alzheimer's, having to do with whatever it may be. And that will give you a more direct answer from people themselves on what they're experiencing. Yep. Yes. Do I know you from somewhere? I feel like I've seen you before. Yeah, I recognize your face. Okay, sorry about that. Go for it. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to answer this question and any question that's like that in a very short, like in a very simplified way. If there is an imbalance in the body, what this technology does is rebalance the body. It helps the body rebalance itself. So for anybody that's going to ask me next, is it good for this? Is it good for that? Is it good for that? It can't not be good for an imbalance because what it's doing is bringing you back into coherency. The question is, what is it going to do when you come into contact with it? To what degree will it help you? For my aunt, she had a 12.5 centimeter cystic fibroid. In 4 hours, it was dissolved. I know somebody else with not that big, but another cystic fibroid in her uterus, and she's been going for a month, and it's gotten smaller, but it hasn't dissolved. Every human being is different. Every body is different. Every way that every human body will prioritize things in a different way. What you may do may be done differently for me. For example, Sandra has very thick hair. I'm bald. You understand? So there's different priorities of what the body is going to do. But I feel great. I have a lot of energy, especially when like we do these tours. The last tour that Ryan and I did together. We did tons of events back to back to back. I don't know how we made it through. I really don't know how we were alive. And it wasn't even tiring up until like the last two events. Like I couldn't walk anymore. But it was exerting a lot of energy. And we were able to move through it. I think that was a big credit due to the fact that we were in the system every single day. It wasn't a normal level of energy that one should be able to exert as a human being. It was a lot, and it was being done. So in short, your imbalances in the body, what the technology always strives to do is rebalance the body, no matter what you have. And any form of ailment, imbalance, disease, whatever it is, the body will always try to heal itself so long as you give it the proper environment and resources to do so. Yes?
My grandson, who's 14, has had 7 open heart surgeries and multiple problems, strokes. He has a mechanical mitral valve. What about mechanical parts of the body?
Those things, pacemakers is fine. We've never seen a problem with them. Dr. Sandra Rose Michael has answered that question. I'm not qualified to answer a question like that, but she said over and over again, she's seen it, she studied it, she doesn't see a problem with it whatsoever, and I've never heard of a problem either. So we've had a lot of people going into it, and we would have heard something was wrong.
How does one know how long it takes for their body to heal? Like how much time does one need to spend in that environment or to heal?
So because of questions like that, we created something called the conditions improvement form. The way that we've been programmed to think is take this and this happens. Take 2 of these and this happens. Take 4 of these a day and in 30 days is what's going to happen. But that's not actually how life works. That's how legality works, of what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. That's not the reflection of reality. It's all based on statistics. So to tell you, go in and you'll see X, Y, and Z based on whatever ailment you may be experiencing, or no ailment, you just want a boost of energy. That's what I use it for. I can't say that in a black and white response because it wouldn't be true. What I could do, and what we're doing now, is we've set up something called the Conditions Improvement Form on unifiedhealing.com that asks a series of questions over a 1 or 2 minute survey. Asks you, what ailment are you dealing with? How severe is it? How chronic is it? How long have you been dealing with it? What center are you going to? How many units do they have? How many hours have you experienced in it? And after X amount of hours, what degree of help did you experience? What degree of improvement did you experience from a rate of 1 to 10? Now let me break down what that actually means. Let's say 1,000 women between the age of 35 and 55 with stage 4 breast cancer all fill out that form after coming to a center. Then whatever results come out of that, let's say we'll be able to say, and this isn't a true statement, I'm just giving you an example, we would be able to say based on a sample size of 1,000 women between the ages of 35 to 55 that reported it themselves, so we're not making claims. This is the people that we're gathering that data and then expressing it to the world based on their claims, based on their experiences and observations and testimonials. The data shows that 77% of women reported that after 6 hours in a 12-unit system, they experienced a change of, let's say, 7 out of 10 improvement, whatever that may be. And then we'll be able to answer those questions more directly. But until then, I like to use what we call a 20-hour base. Whatever you're going to overcome, whatever that thing may be, for example, if it's a tumor versus if it's high blood pressure, your testing is going to be different. One's going to need a scan, the other one's going to need a test of blood pressure, let's say, or a blood test for cholesterol, whatever it may be. So the testing is going to change, but do a test before, do 20 hours, and do a test after. And you see what happens based on the testing. Because not always will you be able to feel a change, right? Not always will you be able to feel something tangible. More sensitive people are able to. The sicker the person is, the easier it is to feel, because when you're moving from 20 millivolts to 70, it's much easier to feel than if you move from 60 to 70, let's say. All right, so I would do a 20-hour base, and I know somebody's going to ask this question, so I'm going to answer it now. Longer spurts and fewer sessions are better than shorter spurts and more sessions. That means that instead of doing 10 2-hour sessions, do 2 overnights at 10 hours each. Allow your body to drop in for a deeper period of time. Just like if you want to get into a deeper meditation state, it's not just about doing, let's say, 20 minutes a day, right? It's saying I can do 20 minutes a day in one shot, or I could do 1 minute a day 20 times. You can't get that deep in 60 seconds. So the 20 minutes in one shot will help you a whole lot more in terms of dropping in. I personally wouldn't even sit in this room if I wasn't sitting there for a minimum of 2 hours. It's a question for Brad. Can you do overnights here? Yes. Yes. So you maybe, Brad, you can give that information when we're done over here. But yes, I would go for longer periods of time, 20-hour base. Overnights are great. See where it takes you. And do your testing before and after. So number one, it's proof to you. And number two, for the next person that calls you crazy, you could show them the test. Yes. No, so don't think about it in terms of 5G or 6G or 10G, because that's a real thing, by the way. They're starting to work on that. It's crazy. But anyways, think about it in terms of distorted energy and coherent energy. There's only 2 categories here. We could name all the labels we want, but it's either coherent or distorted. It's either healthy or sick. That's it. Okay, so what this technology does, most people think that it protects you as like a shield. That's not how it works. As a matter of fact, if it was to protect you, you know that saying, what you resist persists? So if you protect yourself from something constantly, you're making that thing stronger all the time. Instead of protecting yourself from something, instead of creating a shield around you, imagine having a bubble around you where anytime anything incoherent or distorted pass through that veil, that sheet of that bubble, it doesn't bounce off. It comes through, but it changes it from distorted to coherent. So this is distorted, and then it comes in, and it turns into coherent field. So 5G is just fifth generational technology. It's a different level of hertz that a network will work on that's faster than, let's say, fourth generational technology and below. Basically, you're just taking the hertz, and in that way, you're taking the energy and you're reshaping it to something that's coherent instead of distorted, almost like music. Right? So they've taken music and they've turned it into something that's incoherent in terms of the music industry. And if you just change it by 2 hertz, you come back into coherency. So it's a matter of understanding things in terms of energy. But in short, to answer your question, think of it as about anything that comes into this sphere, anything that comes to this room, and it's energy. It goes everywhere through everything, will be transmuted to match the environment in that room, which is coherent as opposed to distorted. Yes? Yes and no. The no part is to the second part that you asked. So he asked, so does that mean if you're in the room, it's not going to impact you, but when you come out here, it will? That means that you would have to live in there. The key is, how do we take that energy with us everywhere that we go? Right? And that goes back into some of the questions over here. How do we tap into that higher part of us? That more, it's a spiritual game that we're playing here. Again, some people, maybe not here, but around the world, and I do my best to speak to the masses, people hear spirituality and they can't understand it, so it's this woo-woo thing. But it's really the basis of everything, right? I'm not talking now about the terms that we've given it with soul and spirit and things like that. I'm talking about energy. That's all we're talking about here. So when you understand things, again, in terms of that, then you don't just have to be in that room to be able to be protected from it or transmute things that come your way. The key is how to take that energy with us everywhere that we go. And that's where breath work comes in. That's where your protocols come in, salt baths. Do you have salt here, Brad? Can you get me a bag, or can somebody get me a bag? I just want to show everybody what it is. There are 2 very important things that everybody I recommend doing, and it's not just when you're in the system, but especially when you're in the system, it's very important to do. Number 1 is salt baths. So he's going to bring out a formula over here that he has. It's very simple. Anything but fake salt that comes from restaurants, because they're generally not real, table salt, and Epsom salt, because that's going to do the opposite of what I'm talking about over here. So remember, we're talking about, back to what, your name is Sergio? Okay, back to what Sergio was asking about, where there's an intoxication of the body and we have to detox the body. What this technology basically does is it takes the body, it shakes it, so all that dirt becomes loose, and that's great, but we have to purge the dirt. We have to purge the toxins. Imagine having that phlegm that comes up and then not spitting it out. Every single time you're just going to swallow it. Why would you do that? You need to get rid of the things that are trying to leave your body. So the mouth of your skin is called your pores. And when you're shaken, metaphorically, by this technology to get that dirt out and loosen that dirt, you're going to need to release it. A salt bath, there we go, there's salt in here. But a salt bath is basically taking salt, putting it in your bath, sitting in there for about 30 minutes, hot water, allowing your pores to open and allowing the salt to act as a medium to pull those things out. And you'll literally see things coming out of your body. The sicker you are, the more things you'll see on the bottom of that tub when you're done. A lot of people ask me, okay, why can't I go in the ocean? It's a good question, because the ocean isn't 100 degrees. You need the pores to open. The ocean is great. Ocean is healing. I'm not saying anything bad about the ocean. But when you use something like this that is not natural, Energy enhancement system is not natural. It's recreating something natural in order to get to where we need to get to, again, to a point where we'll never need it again. Again, adjusting to the world that we're in. But when we live in a world that's not natural, and we do things that aren't natural, and we use things in order to get back to a certain place, you're going to need to use adjusting practices. In this case, a detox protocol with salt to pull that out and catalyze the process. So salt in a bath. There's a formula on unifiedhealing.com, UNIFYD healing.com. I don't remember exactly what tab it's on, but if you just scroll through that, you'll be able to find it. You can get salt here. You can see that formula. You could choose to get it from here, make it your own. I always say get it from centers. So if they sell it, get it from them because it helps support them. And why not support them? Because we need things like this in our towns, in our villages, and wherever we are, in our states and our countries. So long story short, salt bath is very important. The other extremely important thing, and this is specifically when you're experiencing something of like a large degree of illness, okay? Especially when you're very, very sick, and this is important, has to do with food. Now, I'm going to try and simplify and summarize what I'm going to say in a shorter period of time so we can get to some more questions, but it's important. I will preface with what I'm about to say. Some of you may not agree with, that's fine. I'm not trying to impose a certain way of, doing things or living. I just want to share something with you in the most science-based way possible to give you a different perspective on it. One of the main things that Dr. Sandra Rose Michael speaks about is when you're doing this, especially if you're experiencing something like a high stage of cancer, whatever it may be, you're in a dire situation and you're going to need to really do something drastic to get back. She always speaks about not just plant-based food, whole food, real food, vegan food. Now, we're living in a world right now specifically where a lot of people hear that and they say, no, there are psychopaths in power that are trying to make us eat plant-based and they want us to stay away from meat. And that's not false, by the way. That's true, right? But there's a distortion there and something that I want to shed some light on. Let's start with this before I do that. Remember the torsion field. Torsion field is your basis of life. The sun is a torsion field. The sustenance of all life is a torsion field. The sustenance of all life everywhere as we know it is light. And the closest that we can get to that light is the sun. But because we're heterotrophs are things that need to eat other things for their energy, we can't do that directly through the sun unless you're at a very high level like those people in India, and they were able to do that. But most of us aren't there, so we're going to speak to the common person. We need to go and eat food to get energy. Plants don't. Plants create their own food. They are what we call autotrophs. How do they do that? They take sunlight, and through photosynthesis, they convert the energy of the sun into food, into energy. And then, that's the top level of the pyramid, closest to source, closest to that torsion field of sunlight. The second level is herbivores. The third level is carnivores, and the fourth level is processed foods. Plants, fruits, vegetables, herbs, nuts is right on top. Autotrophs that get their energy directly from the sun. Herbivores are things that eat from level 1, that got its energy from the sun. Bless you. Carnivores are things that eat the herbivores, which are animals, that eat the plants on level 1, the fruits and all those things, that get their energy from the sun. And if you pay attention to what's going on here, everything is connected to source. But there are things that are closer and further from that source energy, and that's a fact. And we know that through things like Kirlian photography. Kirlian photography is literally taking pictures of the light of something. And if you were to take a picture of an apple versus a steak, you will see a lot more light in the apple versus a steak. And when you're sick and you have something like cancer, you have a depletion of light in your body. And if you continue eating foods in that state that are also in alignment with a depletion of light, then you're going to have a problem. So at least for that period of time, to eat, and I'm not just talking about plant-based, because this is where the whole psychopath evil agenda comes in, right? The impossible meat and the beyond meat, that's not what I'm talking about. Because impossible meat and beyond meat is not vegan, and it's not plant-based. It's not on level 1, it's actually on level 4. Level 4 is processed foods. It's still connected to source, but it's furthest. It's taking nature and manipulating it into something that's not natural whatsoever. At least a steak was created by something that is divine in terms of its intelligence, right? So, again, level 1, plants, herbs, fruits, vegetables, nuts. Level 2, herbivores. Level 3, carnivores. Level 4, processed foods. Whole foods in their raw form when you're extremely sick is one of the best things that you can do. It will bring you back into coherence with life and the essence of life, because when you eat alive foods, you experience life. There was somebody that said it, I don't remember who, but you can't expect to live if you're eating dead food. You become what you eat. You are what you eat. Now, does that mean that if you eat meat, you're going to be unhealthy? No. Some of the healthiest people that I know are carnivores, and they're great. So it's not as black and white as that, because we also have different lineages. We have different ancestry. We have different ways that our bodies evolved over time. People that come from, Ireland or Germany are different than people that come from the Middle East or anywhere around the equator. It's two different things. So it's not a black and white picture that I'm painting here. But what I will say is one of the most important parts of the protocol when you're experiencing real disease, in order to bring yourself back to that torsion field, to bring yourself back to that highest degree of light while you're sick and experiencing this technology, if you're one of those people, is to eat from the highest source of light that there is. And the simple rule of thumb is the water to matter ratio. So a cucumber is about 98% water. A steak is much less than that. So is a potato, by the way. Much less than that. So the foods that you eat, specifically fruits, that are in their highest water to content ratio will help you the most. Again, it's not that black and white. I'm just giving, with the time that we have here, that's one of the basic foundation that you can go according to. Yes, and then we'll go to you. You.
You explain the difference between being exposed to a single unit or being exposed to multiple units center, for example? What would be the difference?
When you say a single unit,
Like you have
a cube?
exactly.
Yeah, a cube is much less powerful, and it doesn't have the photonic collision. Remember that. So I'm forgetting the exact ratios of how the strength changes over time, but if I remember correctly, and a 4 unit is 10 times stronger than a cube, and an 8 unit is, I think, like 30 times stronger than a cube. And I forgot the 12s and the 16s and the 20s and the 24s and all that. But stronger does not mean better. Okay, there are some people that I know that can walk into 24, and they don't like it. They like the 12 better. It's too much for them. They don't like how it feels. Every human body is different. Now that's rare. I don't hear that often, but I've heard that before. So I wouldn't say that there have been incredible benefits even with an 8 unit. 12 units a lot. All these things we've seen results with. But if you want to get on a technicality of the science behind it, yeah, you're going to have a stronger energetic field and a stronger power that's coming out of that when you have 24 units versus 8 unit, let's say. But stronger does not mean better. Yes. Oh, one sec. I promised her. We'll go to you. Yes. Go for it.
You want to talk about the medallions?
Yes. Yes. So I'm not wearing mine right now because of the microphone. But basically, some people say, what's another way of being able to bring this technology with you? Right? How do we bring this energy with us everywhere that we go? And one of the main ways to do that is through some of the products that they've created. By the way, I didn't even say this in the beginning. I want you all to know I don't have a stake in EE System. I'm not a part of the company. I'm not a shareholder in the company. I love what they do. It's very aligned with my mission. That's why I choose to do all of this. That's why I created Unified Healing, because I think it's an incredible thing to do. But I want everybody to understand that, so you don't think that I'm coming from them and saying, go do X, Y, and Z. Just answering questions. So with the actual products that they've created, they have bracelets and they have medallions. And basically, just like everything else carries energy, stones carry energy as well. Actually, the memory in your phone is stored using a quartz crystal. That's how it works. It's very cool. So if stones can store memory, then imagine being able to embed what you want into that stone and walk around with that energy. They do that all the time. That's how crystals work. It's just taking stones and doing what we call a hypercharging effect. So there's a certain technology, a certain machine that they have in Las Vegas, actually, where their headquarters are. And they hypercharge the medallions and the bracelets. And basically, what that really means is, of course, it's not the same as an entire system because the entire system deals with both sides of the equation. The bracelets and the medallions deal with the scalar torsion field side of the equation. It's not 2.2 miles, it's about 5 to 6 feet outside of you in terms of that sphere that it will create, a cocoon that it will create. So Dr. Sandra Rose Michael calls it the high-tech in the low-tech model, basically embedding scalar energy and scalar technology using stones and then having those as wearables that you can bring all around with you. So where's Brad again? Do you have those over here as well?
We just got a shipment in. We have a table back there. Yeah, we're in here.
Awesome.
We have bracelets and medallions.
Beautiful.
We have a discount.
There we go. Tell us about it.
$10 off the medallions, so they're 90. No shipping, no tax, and 70 for the bracelets.
Awesome. So yeah, you guys could check those out over there. But yeah, I basically go, I live and breathe this thing. I mean, if I'm not in the center, I have them in my house. I have them in my office. I sleep around them. It's basically, how I've been accustomed to doing things over the past 12 months, ever since it came into my field of awareness and I started learning about all this. By the way, as of this morning, we've officially surpassed 300 centers around the world, which is awesome. Okay, we'll do a couple more questions. Yes.
The thing I'm curious about.
And then we'll go to you. Sorry. Yes.
The thing I'm curious about is when I was in India, up in the Himalayas, you've heard of breatharians.
I spoke to one the other day. She hasn't eaten or drank in 5 years.
That's what I experienced when I was up there. And I met a holy man that was about 250 years old up in Bambrinoth. And then we were in the Valley of the Flowers, and being in that energy, there was no desire to eat. And it was like the energy, the vibration of the body, the frequency was unbelievable. And it's like when you're there, you can't even explain it
Yeah.
to people having that, and being at the Ayurvedic medicine, how they do the what do you call it, alchemy.
Yep.
Unbelievable, the gold and the silver and the things. So it's interesting being here and how difficult, I can't say it's difficult, but to achieve that level. Like frequent, I don't understand what I'm talking about. That frequency.
They also live in the mountains.
Yes.
It's a whole different ballgame out there.
Yes.
A whole different ballgame out there.
That's why I love the mountains.
Yeah. But India was hard for me.
Was it?
It was very polluted. Maybe not in the mountains. I didn't go there.
No, when I was there, we're talking 40 years ago.
Oh.
It wasn't polluted, like, as my son showed
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I went, oh, yeah, no, yeah, it was totally different. The energy was absolutely, we went to different ashrams, and the energy.
So back in February, we did a donation on behalf of centers like this with Brad's help. We did a donation to an ashram in India. A 24-unit system went into an ashram for free. That's been running for the past few months, and it's been an incredible experience. We flew out there with the whole team. We made a documentary called The Revolution, in India in this case, and we're planning on doing that basically all around the world. So up next is the Philippines. From there, we're going to go all around Africa, and we're probably going to bring it into schools. We've already brought it to schools here in the U.S., in New York. We could do, yeah, big time. But New York has a school for autistic children. There's 40 students there. It's a private school. And we donated 4 cubes to them in their classroom, which is really cool. So, yeah, I mean, these things are going to continue happening. And again, things like what you say, when people hear old ages, 200 years old, 300 years old, we think it's impossible because Guinness World Records tells us otherwise. But why would it be impossible? If you can live till 120 or 110 or even 100 today in a polluted environment with garbage in every corner that you look, with all these toxins everywhere, and you can still live till that long, then imagine being able to have such a field that can take all that and transmute all that. 300, 400, 500 is not a big deal. And for those of you who, I'm not a religious person by any means, but for those of you who look at I look at it as documented history, things like the Bible. It speaks about it out there, 900 years old. But then the rabbis and all those people will tell you, no, no, they counted time differently back then. So let me give you an answer that will stump them every single time. Okay, because they didn't count time differently, and I'll tell you how I know. Abraham and Sarah. Okay, she was blessed. She couldn't have kids. They wanted kids, and then the angels came, as the story says, and they blessed her with the ability to have children. I think she was like 99 or something like that. And it specifically says, the angels came, they blessed her, and within a year, she had that kid. So you could say they counted time differently all you want, but you know how we know the definition of a year is still a year today, because the time that it takes to biologically hold a baby in your stomach has always been 9 months. Okay, so they did not count time differently. They were actually that old. I believe that. I don't think that it's a far-fetched thing. I don't think that they could have reached such heights. They built things back then that we don't know how they built today. You have to have a level of wisdom that takes time to be able to, forget that. They're telling us they died when they were like 30. I'm 26. Okay, I can't build a pyramid. I don't know how they did that. The average person is still maturing by 25. It's like, you can't do that. There's no way. You died by 30 and they did things that we couldn't do and can't do by age 85, 90 with history of the past 300 years and technology that's been developing. There's no way. So there's truth, and I love that you bring those things up with people walking through walls and old ages, because it's possible, and it's going to become normal. It's just a matter of time where people need to understand that, we're surpassing the limitations that we've once thought were limitations. We're going to go to you and we'll continue. Could you stand up just so people can hear you? Maybe you can speak loud. Yeah, so the colors is what we spoke about over here in terms of using different colors to target different parts of the body, because the body is a map of color. So certain parts of the body work on different colors, and different colors, as it's given to the body in a coherent way, will rebalance and put those certain parts of the body back into its optimal state. No, that's just the way that the code shows. Think about it as color. Don't think about it as different strands in that way. But the first question that you asked was with the Fibonacci sequence. Why is it important that it's actually transmitted in that way? The same reason why it's important that the Fibonacci sequence is displayed through the formulation of a flower all the way to the formulation of an embryo. Because it's a code. Everything in this world is according to numbers. Everything that we experience is a numerical code. Almost like YouTube.com or any website. You right-click on the website. Do this when you get home. Right-click on your website, and you'll see a button that says View Page Source. And View Page Source will open a different window, and on that window you're going to see numbers and letters and symbols and all these crazy things. That's what your website really is. It's called source code. And the job of the computer is to take that source code and to decode it through its RAM and hard drive and CPU and computer chips and all that, whatever it is, and then decode it and project it into YouTube.com. So our experience is that YouTube.com is a video here and a like button, a comment button, and a share, and all these things with spaces in between them. Almost like my experience is that I'm standing about 20 feet away from you right now. But the source code, you and I are not separate. The source code is numerical. The source code is a code in that way. And that's why using codes like the Fibonacci sequence is important in everything that we do, because it's bringing things back into basically in harmony with the laws of creation. If we can do that, then you'll live in the natural way that we were meant to live, which is a healthy body as opposed to disease. Disease is not natural. And we know that because disease is not something that the body ever tries to do. The body always tries to do one thing. You cut yourself, it will do its best to heal itself, whether you're awake, asleep, or in a coma. It always tries to do one thing, and that's its natural state. Yes?
Based on that, can we assume that it is born with missing chromosomes, and DNA is responsible for the creation of the chromosomes? Do they see help with this?
It's a good question. I don't know how you can change something on the level of chromosomes once it's come into being. Almost like, number one, I don't know the answer to that question. Let's start with that. So anything that I'm going to say next is just based on an assumption and thinking through as I'm speaking. So I just want to put that out there. I don't know of a way to be able to generate another chromosome once you've come into being. But what would make sense to me, take a finger, for example. You cut off your finger. You can regenerate that finger. The reason why I know that is because you've done it already when you were formulating in your mother's stomach. Okay, so if you've done it once, you have the memory and the ability to do it again. We've been told you can't do it, so your finger cuts off and it's gone. There's nothing you could do. Your arm's chopped off, it's amputated, you have a missing arm. You have the ability to regrow those things because you've done it once already. If it's in your muscle memory, if it's in the memory of your existence, you can do it. So I guess technically, maybe that's possible. I've never heard of it. I don't know. I've never seen it, but I wouldn't doubt it. I don't, that's testing my limitations now. I don't know.
It's my nephew.
He has Down syndrome?
No, he's just been diagnosed with, no, and he looks normal. You don't know anything about him. You think there's nothing wrong with him, but then there's something in him.
I understand.
So it's very close to my heart. And if we can find out an answer from Dr. Michaels, I would be grateful.
I'll ask her. And I'll probably do like Q&As on YouTube and things like that. So if you come on and ask that question, I'll know it's you. I've never had that question asked before. Yes.
Just wondering, so is there anything that blocks the scalar energy? So like, let's say with these things, or with like, maybe I want to bring in my water to charge.
Nothing physical can block something that's beyond the speed of light. Impossible. Yes. Oh, wait, let's go to you first because I saw you raise your hand, then we'll go in the back.
The remote sessions are popping up throughout a variety of centers.
Mhm.
I have not heard Dr. Sandra Rose Michael or you speak of it because I stalk people. So, how is that received?
Have you ever heard of quantum entanglement? Okay. Quantum entanglement is taking, let's say there's an atom, okay? An atom has different parts to it, subatomic particles. Let's just say for argument's sake, you take an atom and you cut it in half. Or let's do something else. Let's take you and let's take your white blood cells. White blood cells will start responding and have an on excitation when there's a problem with the body because they have to activate to get rid of the disease before it starts taking over you. So your white blood cells are your soldiers. Let's say I take your white blood cells out of your body, some of them, and I put in a petri dish. And then I take that petri dish and I put it over there. And then I do something to you that will cause for your white blood cells in your body to start having an on excitation, to activate. They will do the same thing in that petri dish. You're not connected, but you are. Now here's where it gets interesting. If I took that same petri dish and I put it on Pluto, or I put it on a star 4 light years away, the speed of light tells us that what happens there should take 4 years at the speed of light to happen there. And yet it happens instantaneously. Remember we said the word quantum, they have no clue what the hell's going on? That's what I'm talking about. Quantum entanglement. There's an entanglement between space and time that defies the laws of physics that we understand in space and time. It happens instantaneously regardless of the distance. So remote healing, remote sessions are possible. The level of their degree, I'm not sure. That's something I can't speak on. But in terms of how they work, yes, they're not just with the EE system, with anything. Remote healing is possible because your body is not limited to time and space. Nothing is. Healing is not limited to time and space. Energy is not limited to time and space. So we can limit it if we choose to based on our own limitations. But with a higher awareness, we can also use that awareness to start doing things because, number one, I can take what I just said and use it in a very good way and a very bad way. Okay? Those people at 23andMe and Ancestry.com that have most of people's DNA in America, they're like playing with voodoo dolls if they want to, because what they do to that will affect your body. That's crazy. Think about it like a voodoo doll. It's the same thing, only in a different way. I can literally manipulate your DNA if I have a piece of it, no matter how far away I am from you. So if you could do that in a negative way, why can't you do it in a positive way? Same thing. We'll do 2 more questions. I think I said that 10 questions ago. Yes.
So this technology's been around for a really long time. And
Yeah.
was it, my parents actually, like 25 years ago, had 4 of them in their bedroom.
Okay.
And, but we didn't know what it was. So we would go over and just sit and we'd take naps in there and it felt really good. And then one of them, but my question to you was the technology, has it changed iterations as it's grown 25 years ago? And if so, how?
Yeah, so it started in 1996. I wasn't alive, so I don't know what it looked like. But from what I know, let's take this. In Tony Robbins' house, his screens are smaller and the code looks a little different. I know that they always try and upgrade it and change it. I'm not sure how the since I came into the equation, no, it stayed the same. I know right now they're working on something that's going to make it look incredible, aesthetically speaking. But in terms of the power of what it does, I don't know how that's changed over the past 25 years. I know that the design and the aesthetics have changed over time. Maybe that changed the power. I'm not sure, but yeah, I know that ever since I came into the equation 13 months ago, it's been the same. It's been the same.
I brought my mom here today. She's close to 90 and she left after a couple hours.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty great. By the way, we're bringing a massive one-of-one unit. Ryan's coming with me to film this whole thing at Burning Man. It's called the Cradle of Life, and it's a I think a 48 unit system if I'm not mistaken, and it's huge. It's like 14, 15 feet tall each tower, 4 towers. It's massive. You're not allowed to bring anything commercial to Burning Man, so we had to sell it to them as an art piece. So we called it an art piece. Yeah. But basically, the Cradle of Life is going to be the newest design that nobody's seen before, which is amazing. It's amazing. A massive tower that goes like this, this, and this, and then everybody's like, well, how does it work? Because when it goes like boom, let's say one tower is like angled like this, then straight, then angled like that. Then you have another tower opposite. Then this speaks to that, and this speaks to that, and these two speak to each other. It's very cool. It's super cool. Okay, one more question. We'll go to the back.
Earlier you mentioned the pyramids,
Yeah.
and I've had several sessions at the Wellness Center and got deep relaxation. And my first session, within 10 minutes, I saw myself going down a hallway, deep down with things on the side like inscriptions or things. And I saw myself actually, it felt like Egypt.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go to Egypt because I had such
When are you going?
experience. On my birthday, November 8th.
Oh, I'll be there.
Yeah, oh, you will?
Yeah. I should be there. I was invited to go November 11th. Yeah.
So my question is, do you ever have people that are going through healing, of course, but have an experience such as going to different places or experiencing something like, being, I was in a ritual with women in the pyramids, which we're going to be doing actually in November. So,
I've heard a lot of people have activations of memories.
okay.
Remember, it's one big quantum soup of information. We don't know what the hell's going on, but there's a lot of information everywhere. So just like when you were 2, you know that you had an experience. You were alive for an entire year from 2 to 3. You probably don't remember that. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Your subconscious remembers it. Your conscious doesn't. Your conscious mind doesn't because you're focused on everything else going on. But there's a memory bank with that information. And there's a memory bank with that information because there was an awareness to have an experience. Awareness doesn't mean human body. Awareness means there's an intelligent design of things that are working. That's how we know that something's aware, because there's an order to it. So awareness equals order, order equals awareness. So if there's an order when you're 2, there's also an order when you're an embryo. There's also an order before that, because energy can't come from nothing. It can't be created or destroyed. Therefore, what I'm trying to get to is the whole reincarnation conversation. It's based on everything that we already know to be true. It's just taking the dots and connecting them further that makes most people in the world uncomfortable because it's immeasurable. But what you're talking about is something that I've experienced myself. I've experienced my own memories. I've seen certain things. I've remembered certain things. I haven't remembered people per se yet, but it's cool. You know, it's cool. I know I work with a lot of people that do those things, that work with people from other times, and it's people that have found things that they've buried in different lifetimes. Children that happens to. You can't make it up when you're 4 or 5 years old. You can make it up when you're an adult because you want, fame, fortune, attention, whatever it may be. But when you're 4 years old and you have a 4-year-old sitting there and saying, I remember, there was a story in Israel, and I keep bringing up Israel only because my family's Israeli, just to put that out there. But that's where the background comes from. So there was a story in Israel there was this kid. He was 4 years old. He was just able to speak, basically. And he kept watching this thing on TV when his parents had the TV on, and he said he was watching. They were watching the news. It was a recent, and maybe over the past 10 years. And this was a big story in Israel. And he kept watching. The parents were watching the news, and he saw a house, and the kid said, "That's my house." And they're like, "What do you mean that's my house?" He said, "That's my house. I live there." And he started describing who he was. And he said, "My wife and my kids and my this and my that." And he kept bothering his parents, "Take me to my house." And they're like, "I don't know what to do." They found the house. They took him to the house. And he's looking, and knows everybody. Knows the mom's name, the kids' names. Like it was the father. And everybody's looking like, what? It's a 4-year-old. You can't make something like that up. He's showing you where he buried things in the backyard. He's telling you about his past, things that the parents didn't know. So again, there are so many things that we don't know. The ego wants to know them. It wants closure. But there's a beauty in not knowing. There's a beauty in saying there are things beyond our comprehension. Let's explore them instead of deny them because we don't understand them. So let's sum everything up here. First of all, Brad, I want to say thank you. You're awesome. Thank you so much for making this happen. Thank you. And remember,
Thank you goes there.
thank you. And remember, when it comes to these centers, there are centers like this all around the world. I know most of you probably come from this area, so come support this center, because supporting this center, not only, usually things are a two-way exchange. It's between the center and the person going there, or the business and the person experiencing it. And over here, it's a whole lot bigger than that. Over here, it's saying 4 different parts. It's saying you as the people that are coming to this place, the center owner, Brad, and everybody that he works with, to be able to run this place because it needs people like you to run it. Then when that's successful, they're able to then support Unified Healing and be a part of Unified Healing, which is a nonprofit initiative to bring this and this knowledge that we're speaking about all around the world. This is all funded. These tours, all the videos that you see, the documentaries that come out, everything that you see is funded by Brad and everybody else on the network, which I really want to make clear. And then with the job that Unified Healing does, we're able to take that, help everybody else around the world, and that comes right back to you guys, because I think we all want to live in a better world. We want to live in a world of healthy people. We want to live in a world where cancer is not 40% of Americans that have or had cancer. That's a crazy number. We want to live in a world where heart disease is not the second cause of death and cancer is the first cause of death. We want to live in a world where the third leading cause of death is not the medical system itself. That's a crazy fact that most people don't know. We can live in a world of health because that's the world that we come from. It's who we are, and it's where we're going to, so long as we use the resources that we have at our fingertips. The energy enhancement system is one of them. There are many things at your fingertips: your breath work, your connection, your community. Connect with people around you. Speak your truth and forget about what everybody is going to say calling you crazy. I've been called crazy my whole life, and I'm respected most by the people that hate me the most. That's why they do what they do. So let's continue what we're doing, and thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Can you pull our 3 winners?
Yes, let's go. Who wants to win?
This is the 12 hours.
Okay, 90. Unless it's 6. No, I'm just messing with you. It's 90. Who has 90? There we go. So that one's the 12 hours. Okay. Listen, we're going to make this fair, guys. Okay. 89. 89, man. Okay, I'm going to have to go deeper here. Okay, let's go. That's not deeper. That's higher. 110. Okay, that's what happened. The next one was 111.
That's it, only 3.
That's all we got. That's all we got.
So, yeah, that's you. Yeah, yeah, great. So everybody should have a card with them, and I'm going to stick around if anybody wants to talk
Yeah,
about overnight
that'd be awesome.
prices
Thank you.
and any of that. You can also book on the website, which is on the card that you guys have. And there's more cards up here if anybody wants to get more. And thank you so much for coming. And another huge applause for Jason!
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, all right. Here, you get the picture. Love you.
Sound of freedom.
Oh yeah. We just while we're on that topic. Wait. Let's talk about that for a second, real quick. Real quick. Okay, first of all, let's dispel a few things. There are some weird things going on around the internet. Don't record this part. Only because I'm not allowed to say it. It's confidential according to my contract, but forget about it. Just don't record this, anybody. First of all, we